Welcome everybody. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Welcome everybody. My name is Alaina G. Levine. I'm president of Quantum Success Solutions, and it's my extreme delight to welcome you today to this wonderful AIP webinar entitled Network Yourself to a Great Career. I'd like to thank AIP and its career network partners, which you see in the corner there, for their support of this type of career development event. And before we get started, I just wanted to give you a couple of housekeeping issues. If for some reason you can't see anything on the screen, just log out of the webinar and log back in. If the slides for some reason are slow to load, you can just again log out and log back in, and you can test your internet speed at speedtest.net. And then finally, if you have any questions, there's a questions console off to the corner of your screen, and you can type in your questions, and at the conclusion of our webinar, I'm going to stick around for a few minutes afterwards and answer any questions that come up. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and begin. And I want to begin by telling you a little bit about myself and why that picture, that's me right there, why that picture is there. So I'm the author of a book called Networking for Nerds. It's going to be coming out later this year, in February. And I love networking. I think it's a terrific way to move your career forward, to move your discipline forward, and we're going to be talking about that today. But the reason I chose this particular picture to show you who I am and what I look like is because this is an opportunity that I got specifically from networking. So I am a science writer, I'm a career consultant, I'm a professional speaker, I'm a comedian, as most of you know, and as you'll become very apparent as we continue today. And I was at a conference, a writing conference, and I met an editor there, and we talked about our interests, and I said I'd be very interested in writing for your publication. And as a result of that networking that took place at the conference, and then all the follow-up emails that I did to follow up to continue the relationship, I was able to get an assignment where I wrote about an engineer who works for a race car company. So that was me at the racing track. They put me in a special fire suit and they gave me the headphones so I could hear what was going on, reporting on this engineer who works at the for a race car team. And it was absolutely fascinating. And I would not have gotten that job. I would not have gotten that job if I had not networked. And so I wanted to really emphasize to you how powerful networking is in moving your career forward in ways that you probably didn't even think you could do, and also in past that you didn't even think were available or accessible or even in existence. So for today, we're going to be talking about networking strategy goals, and specifically we're going to be discussing the importance of networking, the importance of self-promotion and marketing, and I'm going to explain why you don't ever have to worry that those two words are sleazy or wrong or don't belong in science and engineering. We're going to talk about developing your brand statement and adding people to your network, how to network at an event, and then we're going to do a quick social media networking case study of LinkedIn that I think you will find very helpful. So with that, let me begin by asking the question, because I know you're thinking that to yourself, Alaina, why should I bother networking? I'm freaking brilliant. I can get a job, no problem. And here's what I'm to tell you. I know you're freaking brilliant. I know you're brilliant because you decided to study STEM. You wouldn't have chosen STEM as a career, STEM being the hardest thing on the planet to study and to pursue, if you were not brilliant. But the fact is that if you want to advance in STEM, whether it's in academia or beyond, you absolutely have to network. Networking is not an option, it is a requirement. Now, why is it necessary? Part of the reason why networking is necessary is because it opens access to what I call the hidden platter of opportunities. And it's almost like a platter, that's why the way I sort of visualize it, in that I offer you opportunities once I get to know you. And that's what happened to me with that assignment with that editor. I was networking with him at the conference. I followed up and continued networking with him, and he presented to me the opportunity to write about scientists and engineers for this publication who work in unusual jobs. And that's how I was able to get the position. So I was networking, and that's what landed me the job. And so what happens is this hidden platter of job opportunities, assignments, short-term projects, even appointments to have coffee with somebody or apply for awards or opportunities to apply for jobs that are hidden, that haven't even been advertised, is open to you once you start networking. And so that's why you want to network. And you want to be diversified in your networking, in that you don't want to just network with scientists and engineers, because there's another side of networking, and that is that you want a constant diversity of sources of inspiration that can help you, that you can call upon, that can help you think about your career and your discipline in new ways. And that's also why networking is absolutely necessary to advance science and engineering. So let's put your career off to the side for just a moment. I know you care about your career, but let's pretend for a moment you don't care about your career, but you do love science and engineering. Whatever field you are in, it is like chocolate for your brain. You love it. Okay, so you want to advance your area of STEM, you're going to have to network. And that is also required because of the same idea with the constant inspiration, sources of inspiration that you need to move your career forward. It's the same concept. If I'm going to move my discipline forward, I have a need, not an option, but I have a need to be able to network and interact with new people and similar people in my field and out of my field who can give me ideas and inspiration to solve my problems in new, novel, and innovative ways. It's absolutely required. You know this because science and engineering are very collaborative. Well, that's an example of networking, right? We're collaborating with different people who can all bring their own experience to bear on the problem. And so if you want to advance science and engineering, if you just want to advance your discipline or your sub-discipline or your sub-sub-discipline, you're going to have to network. And so we know that we have to network. We need people in our networks who can help us solve our problems, both on the science and engineering side and then also with our own career advancement. And the key thing I want you to think about is that it is as much of a job as being a scientist or an engineer. No matter what job you have, networking is a major part of it. And if you do it a lot, especially in low-stake environments like on an airplane or in a grocery line, if you start a conversation with somebody and find out what they work on and what moves them and what's exciting about what they do, then you will become more confident and comfortable in networking in higher stakes environments like at a conference or when you go to a special event or when you're serving on a committee. So do look at it as a job in the sense that it's a requirement and that the more you do it, the more opportunities are going to be open to you, and you're going to find out about opportunities. You might even be able to create opportunities. That's happened to me so many times, just because of networking. To give you a quick example, I once went to a networking function for communications managers, because my background includes science communications. And while we were at this function, there were a number of editors who were up at the front of the room talking about how to pitch their publications, stories. And so I went up to the panel. After the panel was concluded, I went up to one of the panelists and I said, "Hi, my name is Alaina Levine. I'd love to write a column for you about communications." That I just blurted it out. It just came to my head and I just blurted it out. And many of you know that that's just the way I do things. You'll get used to doing that too. But I was networking with him and I said, hey, I have this idea. And so what I did was I actually created the idea. I created the opportunity. And he said, you know what, that's not a bad idea. Let's meet and talk about it. And a few months later, I found myself as a columnist for this magazine. And that was an opportunity that I got, again, from networking and from creating the opportunity through networking. So successful people are going to do what non-successful people are not willing to do. So I want you to have the courage to be able to go up to people at conferences and to be able to volunteer to serve on committees and to do other networking activities that will start to help people understand what your value is, what your experience is, what your expertise is, and also vice versa, you'll start to understand what problems other people have to solve and how you might be able to solve them for them. And that's pretty amazing when that happens. So as I mentioned, the key here is when we network, we're opening access to this hidden platter of opportunities. Now, depending on who you talk to, some people say that up to 90% of opportunities are hidden. Some people say 50%. Some people say, some other number in between. Forget about the fact that it's not able to be exactly quantified. I can't give you a specific number of how many hidden opportunities out there. But what I can tell you is that in my own experience, both as in myself, my personal professional experience, as well as the experience I have in working with STEM professionals across the board, most often the jobs that they get are gotten because they were hidden opportunities. They found out about those hidden opportunities exclusively through networking. So they found out about them by sharing conversations, by creating conversations with people in which they were able to share ideas as to how they could solve each other's problems. I'm going to talk more about the concept of what networking is in a moment. But I just want you to know that, I've had people come to me and say, Alaina, I've applied for 60 jobs. Every job was advertised in the back of this magazine or on this website. I never get an interview. I never get in. And yet somehow there are other people who are not only getting in for interviews, but they're even being called and invited to apply. How are they doing that? How are they finding out about these jobs before they're advertised? How are they getting invitations to apply for them? How are they getting to the top of the candidate pile? It's because they've been networking with those people from the get. They've met them at conferences or they reached out to them and they said, I'd like to learn more about this, your department, your organization, your team, your research group. Maybe there's an opportunity to collaborate. And an opportunity is born for them and an opportunity is born for the other party. Now, when we start with networking, we're always going to start with our goals. We want to establish what our goals are for networking, just like with anything in our lives. So first off, we want to think, at some point we're going to need a job. We may already need a job right now. We're going to need and want advice. We definitely want to know more about our industry, our sector, our university, our company, our community, our geographic area. We want to increase our skills. We want to consistently and constantly be improving upon ourselves. That's the mark of a successful person also. At some point, we're going to want and need a collaboration, financial support, and like I said earlier, we want and need inspiration and new ideas on a regular basis. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about what networking specifically is and what it isn't. So networking is about crafting and cultivating strategically, mutually beneficial partnerships. So it's about creating win-win relationships with another party. And as such, it begins from that first point of contact, but it actually is more than just me meeting you at a conference. So if I meet you at a conference, we talk, we share some meatballs and a drink and a laugh, and then I never speak to you ever again, that is not networking. That is a waste of time for both of us. But what networking actually is it begins with that first interaction, and it's a spectrum of activities that aims for this win-win partnership and involves myriad correspondence and actions that provide value to both of us over the course of many, many years even. And it ends only when one or both of us drop dead. That is networking. It's a spectrum of activities aiming for the win-win. It ends when one or both of us drop dead. The key point that I wanted to make here is that it starts with that first interaction. The win-win is the important part, because a lot of people think networking is about me trying to extract something from you, me trying to pull something out of you, pull something out of your, get a job from you, get an opportunity from you, get a grant or a recommendation or something from you. And that makes people very nervous, right? Because that could be considered to be very sleazy. That's not what networking is. Especially in STEM, networking is not about what I can extract from you. It's what can I do for you? What can I do to help you? What can I do to contribute to your team, to add value to your team, to solve your problems in a new way? And so when you're networking with people at conferences, when you're having that first interaction and follow-up appointments to interact with them, what you're aiming for is, I want to learn a little bit more about what you're working on, because I want to see what I can do to solve your problems. I want to see how I can aim to contribute value to your team. And I've worked with a lot of scientists and engineers. Once they embody this concept, they've been able to also create opportunities for themselves or find hidden opportunities. A case in point, one of my colleagues, she is a mathematician who always wanted to work for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And for some reason, the JPL, at the time when she was applying for jobs that were advertised, were not hiring people with a mathematics PhD. They weren't hiring people with that degree. They were interested in geophysicists and physicists and material scientists and so on and so forth, astronomers and planetary scientists. But she really wanted to work for JPL. So she started talking to people, making informal appointments or appointments for informal conversations with people at JPL, just reaching out to them, sending them cold emails, or if she saw somebody speaking at a conference, she'd go up to them and say, "Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" And she started letting people know about her expertise in mathematics and how she could help on the calculation and the quantification side in a very rigorous manner of whatever project they happen to be doing. And in particular, this professional was very interested in working in volcanology. And so what she did was, through networking, she established herself as an expert in mathematics associated with the calculations and the quantification of the scientific research that goes on in the volcanology group. And when an opportunity did come up, they went to her first. They said, you know what, actually we do need somebody with that level of expertise or with that kind of information. So please, would you consider applying for this position? Or we have this position available. Why don't you, why don't you come in for it? So that's an example of the hidden platter of opportunities being presented to her because she was networking with these people, trying to find out what it is that she could do for them. It wasn't, I want to get something. It wasn't, I want to work for volcanology at JPL. It was, I want to help you by giving you a higher level mathematical analysis of the work that you're doing. I'm going to add value by doing this, by injecting my mathematics background into this group, and this is how I can help you. And they saw it as something very valuable, and as such they invited her to apply, and she got the job. And now she's a very happy volcanologist / mathematician at JPL. So what this professional did is she promoted herself. So networking is inherently linked to self-promotion. I don't want you to get worried about that, because we often hear in science and engineering and in some other fields that self-promotion, marketing, selling, any of those things are dirty, right? We're not going to sell ourselves out. We're not going to do that. And I don't want you to think that. It's actually the quite opposite. I mean, there are ways of promoting yourself that are completely appropriate, and you use appropriate channels. You know, Donald Trump screaming in somebody's face, "I'm awesome, hire me," that is not appropriate for STEM, right? But there's ways of promoting yourself, and in fact, you're already doing it, because I know you're writing papers, or if you're not writing papers, I know you aspire to, and I know you're giving talks, and if you don't give talks, I know you aspire to. Even if you give a talk for 2 people, you aspire that, okay? And you're serving on committees, you're applying for awards, you're doing all these things. These outputs that you're doing are all self-promotion outputs. You're communicating to the public your value. So that is totally appropriate, right? Of course, in science and engineering, whether you stay in academia or you work for a hospital or you work for a company or a nonprofit or in government, you're going to be doing these types of outputs, and every time you do it, you're promoting yourself. In fact, right now, as I'm giving this webinar, I'm promoting myself to you. So you can see that this is totally appropriate self-promotion, and it's important to do because you want to network. That's how you network. When you communicate, when I introduce myself to you, I am promoting myself to you. I am telling you a little bit about my background and how I might be able to help you. So the marketing, the selling, the self-promotion that we're talking about in networking are all linked to authenticity and truth-telling. This is not me trying to unload a bad used car on you. That's not what networking is, okay? It's not quote-unquote schmoozing. I'm not trying to pull one over on you. I am authentically trying to find out through my own truth-telling, through telling of my own story, of my own experience, my own value, my experience, my skills, expertise, my credentials, and so on and so forth. My telling of my truths, I'm authentically trying to learn more about you so I can find out what problems you have that I might be able to solve. And in doing this, what I'm doing also is I'm enticing you to learn more about me. And I'm encouraging you to make a decision. And the decision that I'm encouraging you to make is to want to work with me. A positive decision that could encourage an alliance, a partnership, a networking partnership or relationship for a long period of time. So this information that I share with you about how I started my own company, or I worked at the JPL doing X, or I have experience using this particular type of instrumentation, that is not self-promotion. That is strategic information that is important for the other party to have if they're going to make a positive decision to work with you, right? And I know a lot of people, especially in other cultures, in many cultures, in cultures in the U.S. and outside the U.S. and everywhere across the world, we find that there's a concern it's not appropriate to self-promote. But I want you to lobotomize the part of your brain. Literally, I want to literally lobotomize the part of your brain that thinks that marketing and promotion of your own truth that is important for you to advance in science and engineering and other fields, and also to advance the discipline. I want you to lobotomize that part of your brain because it is important. You have to market yourself. You have to tell other people what it is that you can do for them. And there's nothing inappropriate about doing it in appropriate channels like speeches, like papers, like serving on committees, and even when I meet you at an event, if I, introduce myself and I say, oh, it's nice to meet you, where do you work? And you say you work at JPL, and I say, oh, that's interesting. I just did a fellowship where I was able to do X relating to jet propulsion. That's not me promoting, that's not me bragging. I'm not bragging, I'm giving you information that is relevant to our discussion if we're going to move forward in our relationship. So also I want you to remove the word bragging from your lexicon. It's no longer in your dictionary because there's no such thing as bragging. So the key point here is that networking and self-promotion are inherently linked, and is nothing wrong if you promote yourself in the appropriate way using the appropriate channels. So when we are promoting ourselves, I want you to think about why we want to promote ourselves. And I kind of touched on this already, right? It establishes and promotes and solidifies our credibility and our expertise. It keeps our name and our work fresh in the minds of the public. So it sort of creates a buzz, so that when I'm thinking about a project and I need somebody with an expertise in, physics and medicine, and I've already talked to you and we've had a good conversation and we've networked, you're the first person I'm going to go to because that solves my problem quickly. If I have an opening and I already know you and know your area of expertise and how you could potentially help my team at the hospital, I'm going to go to you because you created a buzz. You kept your work and your name fresh in my mind, and so I would like to hire you versus investing time and energy and other resources to try and find somebody else who I don't know. And then also self-promotion shows your dedication to your business, industry, and profession. So now, what do we want to promote? We want to promote our expertise. We want to promote our value to the customer. So the customer is anybody who could be a potential partner. So it could be a principal investigator, it could be a potential employer, it could be just somebody, for example, on a committee that you're serving with. But it's anybody that you're providing some sort of value, either problem-solving value or scientific and engineering value business value, communications value, any sort of value. We want to also promote why we're better than the competition. You know, your unique set of skills, experience, expertise, credentials, and your pedigree are singular to you. Nobody else on the planet has exactly the combination of all of those things than you, and so that makes you better than the competition for a number of different things. And so we want people to know that. And we also want people to know that we're enthusiastic. We want them to know our attitude and our brand. So let's talk a little bit about the connection between brand, attitude, and reputation. These are very important. So first of all, a lot of people think a brand is a logo or a cartoon character or even a tagline. And a brand is actually something more simple. It's your promise of value. So products have brands, right? There's Coca-Cola and there's Pepsi and other brands. Universities have brands, right? And individuals have brands. You have a promise of value too. Now, before I go into your promise of value, your brand, let me give you an example with Coca-Cola and Pepsi and how the promise of value is so important in networking. So for me, I like Coca-Cola. And what that means to me is that at some point in my history, I tried a Coke. I thought it tasted good. So now there was an expectation that if I tried it again, it would taste good too. So there was a promise. So I tried it the second time, and indeed the promise was delivered, that it was still delicious the second time I tried it. So now there's an expectation that every time I drink a Coke, it is always going to deliver value to me. It is always going to deliver deliciousness and enjoyment. Okay, that's great. So that's a positive brand in my mind. But there's also negative brands, right? So Pepsi, for me, I hate Pepsi. So at one point I tried it, I didn't like it, thought I'd give it another shot, tried it again, it still sucked. I tried it a third time, it sucked even more, and now I will never go towards a Pepsi with a 10-foot pole. So for me, the brand of Coke is a brand, a promise to deliver deliciousness and enjoyment and pleasure, whereas for me, the brand of Pepsi is a promise to deliver gross, sick, disgusting. Okay? Now what you have is a promise of value. You have a brand, your promise of value. And very simply, your promise of value is your promise to deliver excellence, dependability, and expertise in whatever it is you do. Excellence, dependability, and expertise in whatever you do. And so when you talk to people, when you're networking at an event, at a conference, when you send me a cold email and say, Alaina, I find your work very interesting. I'd love to set up an informal conversation with you and learn more about what you're working on. Maybe I can contribute to your team or contribute to your efforts. What you're sharing with me is your promise of value, your promise to deliver excellence, dependability, and expertise. And people make decisions as to whether or not they're going to hire you or whether or not they're going to bring you into their team or bring you into their group based on your brand, based on that promise of value, which you're communicating every time you open your mouth or send an email. Now, there's another element to this whole quantum connection, I call it, which is your attitude. And your attitude is your calling card of your brand. It's actually how you communicate your brand. And some people say that attitude is everything, and I would almost completely agree. In that, when you walk into a room, are you, like, for example, a mixer at a conference or an interview, for goodness sake, are you excited to be there? Not frenetic, but energetic, excited, enthusiastic, humbled by the people that you're around. Are you sharing your information in a way that is appropriate, not like Donald Trump, but appropriate self-promotion? People notice your attitude, and they make decisions on whether or not they want to engage you based on your attitude. And it's really amazing. They can also make decisions which could be correct or incorrect on your brand based on your attitude. And this is why the attitude is so important. See, I can't teach you an attitude. I can't teach you your personality. If I'm going to bring you into my group, if I'm going to hire you into my team, I can teach you lots of skills. I mean, we can start from the very basic stuff, and I can teach you all the technical skills. But I cannot adjust, or for the most part, I cannot adjust your attitude, and I certainly can't teach you to have a good attitude. And I want to give you an example of how an attitude behavior, how behavior based on attitude affected my decision-making when it came to hiring somebody, because people notice these things. So many years ago, when I worked for the University of Arizona Physics Department, I was the communications director, and I needed to hire a student assistant to help me in my public relations and my communications and outreach. And so I had the door closed to my office when the candidates for that position approached. I actually just wanted to see how they handle a closed door. Would they do the most professional thing and wait for me to say enter and then come on in? Or would they run away screaming? Would they crawl in a ball on the floor and start sucking their thumb? What would they do? And 9 out of 10 candidates, I'm happy to say, did the most professional thing. They waited for me to say enter, they knocked, they waited for me to say enter, and they came on in. And that attitude immediately set the stage for a really good conversation. But there was one guy who didn't do that. And I don't want you to be that guy, okay? I don't want you to ever be that guy. So this guy walked right into my office, didn't knock, he just walked right in because, he owned the place and he wanted me to know. And he sat down in the chair opposite me for the interview. This is a job interview, remember? And it was one of those office chairs that rock back and forth, and he put his hands behind his head and rocked back and forth throughout the entire interview. And what I got from that experience, aside from being seasick and laughing hysterically later, was this guy thinks he is the bomb. He thinks he's awesome. He is so cocky. He is so arrogant. I could never work with this person. That's what I got from his attitude. His attitude communicated to me his brand. Now, this guy could have been the most brilliant outreach and communication specialist in the history of humanity. But his attitude told me something different. His attitude told me that he was cocky, that he didn't work well with other people, that he wasn't professional, and as a result, I made a decision not to hire him. And this is what I don't want to happen to you. I want when people see you, when you're in their space, when you're emailing them, that your attitude is always professional, that you're showing that you're serious about your craft, and that you're always excited about that you're to be there, and you're always interested. You're showing them, I have an interest to be here, and I have respect for you and for this place, and I'm demonstrating an attitude which demonstrates what my brand is, what my true promise of value is, that I have all these skills and experiences that can lend value to your organization. So make sure that your attitude is one of positivity and energy and excitement and appreciation for where you are, and people will notice that, and they'll move you towards the next step of your career because of your attitude. The last piece of this puzzle is your reputation, which is also extremely important. And people think that the most important thing that you have at your disposal when you're advancing in your career is what you know. And it's actually not that. It's what people know about you, or more specifically, what they know about your brand. So your reputation is your most important asset. It is going to open access to the hidden platter of opportunities, and it's also going to close access. In other words, if you have a bad reputation, doors whereas if you had a great reputation, doors are going to open. People are going to come towards you. People are going to say, hey, would you like to apply for this position? Or, hey, would you be interested in, applying for this fellowship? Or would you like to serve on this committee? That's when you have a great reputation, people offer you opportunities, hidden opportunities. But when you have a bad reputation, they close the opportunities and you don't even know they exist. You don't even get access to them. You're not even allowed to know where they are. And so what happens is when you are out and communicating your brand, when you're networking, people note and make decisions based on what your reputation is based on your brand and attitude. So your brand and your attitude feed into your reputation. What people know about your brand, your promise of value. So if your reputation ever takes a nosedive for some reason, and it could be nothing that relates to you personally, it could be just an internet fluke, for example, you have to get back on there and make sure that your reputation is elevated to the status that it should be, which is of positivity. Because your reputation is going to sneak into nooks and crannies, into the ether, into industries, into sectors, into organizations and companies and universities and hospitals, places you would have never expected that they would show up. It would show up. It's going to get there. It's going to be transmitted. And we want to make sure that if people are talking about you, when they're talking about you, they're talking about how great you are and what value you could provide to this organization and what a great attitude you have. I can tell you that when I applied for that position, or when I went up to that editor at that networking function and said, I want to write a column for you, he said, well, that's a great idea. Let's talk about it. So I actually went to his office and I treated it like a formal job interview. And I brought column samples and my resume and my portfolio and so on and so forth. but I did not bring with me references, a list of references. And surprisingly, a few months later, when he emails me and he says, we're going to give you the opportunity, we're going to give you the job of writing this column, he wrote in the email, you have an excellent reputation. And I was shocked because I didn't give him anybody to talk to. I didn't give him a list of people he should call to find out about my reputation. How did he know? Especially since he was new to the industry, he was new to the company. Somehow he found out that from my reputation, somebody had communicated it to him, or various people had communicated it to him, that I would be an asset to his team, that I had a good brand, and that my attitude was a winning attitude. And so that really awakened to me the idea that your reputation is being communicated and transmitted out there, and we need to make sure that it is positive and only is reflective of your value, of what you can truly do for a partner. And as you brand yourself, as you communicate to others and network with people, what you're doing is you're branding yourself as a leader in your field, so then more hidden opportunities can come your way. So let's talk about the actual networking strategy that you will have when you're working on building your networks. And remember that we're talking about networks, because we don't just want one network, and we're not just going to network with scientists and engineers in our field or subfield. We want to network with people outside of our field, outside of our university or hospital or industry or whatever, outside of our geographic area. We want a diverse set of networks. So we start again with the idea that networking is the spectrum of continuous activities, and the idea of 6 degrees of separation, which basically says that if you want to find or connect to anybody else on the planet, you're no more than 6 degrees away from them. So I know somebody who knows President Obama. So that means if you know me, you're no more than 3 or 4, depending on how you define it, degrees away from President Obama. But of all the people that are listening to this webinar today, I bet that if you all were able to network, like if you were all able to come together in a room and talk to each other, I guarantee that there would be people that are closer to President Obama than I am. And this is very powerful, because this means that if you want to work for Company X, University Y, Hospital Z, and so on and so forth, you can find people who are in those positions, who are in those organizations through your networks by using the idea of 6 degrees of separation. I'm going to look for somebody. Do you know anybody who works for this university? Do you know anybody who works for this hospital or this company or in this nonprofit? And that helps you to connect with people. So we're going to find people for our networks, and I'm going to give you some examples about that in just a moment. And then we're going to ask for, once we're talking with people, once we're actually making that first interaction, and that first interaction, like I said, could come in person, but more often than not, you're going to be networking via email. In other words, you're going to find somebody, and I'm going to show you how in a moment, you're going to find somebody that you want to connect with, that you want to network with, to potentially build a collaborative win-win partnership with, and you're going to send them an email to ask them if you can have a meaningful engagement or a conversation with them. And what you're actually asking for is what I didn't call it this, it's not my term that I made up, but it's called an informational interview, or what I prefer is informal conversation. So, for example, let's say you read an article that I wrote and you thought it was really interesting for whatever reason. You send me an email, Dear Alaina, my name is Jane Smith. I'm a graduate student in applied physics at the University of X, and I'm studying A, B, and C. I found your article interesting for these reasons. I'm especially interested in learning more about the area that you wrote about, and I think there might be even an opportunity for us to collaborate, because I'm working on X and I see that you're working on X plus 1. Would it be possible for us to have an informal conversation? I'd like to explore the potential to possibly contribute to your team. And I actually use those phrases when I send out cold emails like that to people that I want to network with. And when I say informational interview or informal conversation, that's a code word to the other person that I am literally interested in a value exchange over time, that mutually beneficial partnership. I'm not trying to extract something from you. I am trying to build a relationship with you. And so we're going to be providing value to each other over time, and that could come in the form of you telling me about a job opportunity, me helping you solve a problem because I have a technical expertise in X and you need X, you telling me about a committee that might be interesting for me to join, me telling you about a friend of mine who has an expertise in Y and you're looking to hire somebody in Y but not X, which is my area right now. In other words, we're providing value back and forth. And so that's what starts this. So we ask for the informational interview or the informal conversation so that we can let the other party know that we're interested in creating a value exchange. And then we have the conversation, and we could be on the phone, it could be if we're local, having a coffee appointment or lunch or on Skype. And when I'm talking to you is I want to learn more about what you do and how I can help you, right? So I'm going to be asking you questions about, what's the best part of your job? What skills do you value most? If I'm early in my career and I want to learn more about opportunities in your organization or in your career path, I might ask you questions like, what are some of the entry points, or what skills should I be honing right now if I wanted to join your team? Can you tell me more about some of the projects? Have you ever worked on X? I see you do X+1, but have you ever worked on X? And so we have this conversation, and then I'm going to send a thank you note because it's important to express gratitude to somebody if they help you out, if they take time out of their day. And then I'm going to maintain the network, right? So this is a challenging part for a lot of scientists and engineers because, okay, Alaina, I've sent an email, I've set up an informal conversation, I've now had the conversation, and now I've sent a thank you note. What do I do next to stay connected? And it just differs depending on the nature of the relationship and also depending on the priority that the both of you have on the relationship right now and also your own timeline. For example, if you contact me and you want to work in my research lab as a postdoc and you're graduating with your PhD in 6 months, then it would be worthwhile to stay connected maybe not every few weeks, but maybe once a month to send me an email. And what you're sending me is emails that are interesting to me, that provide me value. Maybe you're telling me about an article that would be of interest to me, or a video, or you're sharing new information about yourself. Hey, Alaina, just want to let you know I just won the Nobel Prize. Thank you so much for all of your support, and maybe you'd like to accompany me to the event. You could also tell me something about myself. Say, maybe I won the Nobel Prize, and you want to send me, hey, Alaina, just a quick email to let you know congratulations on winning the Nobel Prize. So you stay connected in various ways. I'm going to organize my network in the sense that I'm going to keep track of who I'm speaking with, when I'm speaking to them, and when I should be speaking to them next. I actually will go into my calendar after having an informal interview with somebody, informational interview with somebody. I will go into my calendar a few months later, a few weeks later, depending on what we've talked about, to make a note to myself to remind myself to contact them again that week. And I also, during the informational interview or informal conversation, I always ask somebody, who else should I be talking to about this? And I also offer to be of assistance. And don't think that just because you're early in your career and you're talking to a Nobel Prize winner or you're talking to a senior member of your field, that you do not have anything to offer this person of value. You have a great deal to offer people of value from when you are in a junior point in your career to somebody who is a senior point in their career. And that's not me just making that up out of thin air. I asked Nobel Prize winners about this very specific thing. There's a conference where a lot of Nobel Prize winners come and a lot of students come. And I asked when I went there, I asked some of the Nobel Prize winners, why do you keep coming back every year? And they said to me, Alaina, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, I want to talk to the students and the postdocs who come because they're giving me ideas and inspiration to solve my problems, my scientific and engineering problems in new ways. I've been close to the problem for many, many years, but they're coming at it with fresh eyes, fresh techniques, fresh skills that they've learned. They are providing me value because they're giving me ideas and inspiration to solve the problem in a new way. So that's one element that you as an early career professional can provide a senior member of your community. But there's another thing that the Nobel Prize winners told me, and this was interesting to me too, is that they said, you know what, the students, the postdocs, the early career professionals today are going to be the people that are going to bring my work into the next generation, into the future. So I am dependent on working with early career professionals if I want to see my work go forward. So that goes back to that earlier slide at the very beginning when I said that networking is a necessity for advancing science and engineering. Here's a Nobel laureate saying that if I want my area of science to continue and move forward and be more innovative and solve new problems and discover new information about nature in the future, I have to network with early career professionals as well as people in the junior and senior levels of their career too, because they're going to be helping to bring it into the next generation. So always think that. I don't want you to ever think, I'm not going to go up to Dr. God, I call them Dr. Gods, at the conference. He's the plenary speaker, the keynote speaker, because why would he talk to me? I'm just an early career person. I'm just a postdoc. I'm just 5 years out of my postdoc. Why would he talk to me? If he's smart, and he probably is because he studied STEM, he knows that you would be able to provide him value in numerous ways. And it's your job to be able to communicate that value to him. So now we want to talk about, now that we've put together our networking strategy, let's talk about how we find people for your networks. Now, the best resource you have at your disposal is your professional organizations. And wow, here's a bunch of them right here in the corner of your screen. You're all members of those different organizations. They rely on your volunteering for their success. So if you went to the membership coordinator or the executive director or any number of committee heads in your membership society and said, you know, I don't want to volunteer. I want to learn more how I can become a more engaged member. They are going to be freaking thrilled that you did that. They rely on you. So do volunteer. They will introduce you to people in the organization, people who you would like to have partnerships with, mutually beneficial partnerships with, people with whom you can network. You will learn how the organization is run, which can give you some new ideas about career opportunities. And then once you join committees, suddenly when you're on a committee, particularly in the professional societies, a spotlight is shown on you. There's a spotlight on you that shows other people your attitude, your brand, and amplifies your reputation. Because when you're serving on a committee, if I'm, like, for example, the chair of the committee, and here's this person serving on the committee, you're serving on my committee, I'm getting a sense of what you do. I'm getting a sense of your attitude. I'm getting a sense of your work ethic and what kinds of skills and expertise you have. And now my brain is churning, and I'm thinking, this person is so amazing on this committee, I'd love to have her work in my organization. I'd love to have her work in my department or my research group or my hospital, or whatever it is. So absolutely volunteer. That spotlight is going to be shining on you in a very good way, and people are going to start to see you, and they're going to be thinking about opportunities that they can present to you, hidden opportunities that you could potentially take advantage of. And you'll gain a lot of skills from volunteering. I can tell you that I am here today in my career because I volunteered for organizations throughout the entire time I was, throughout my entire career, even when I was a student. I volunteered for the Society of Physics Students. I was the co-president at the University of Arizona. That gave me a lot of skills, but that helped to elevate me to join, to be known in the physics department, so that when I was applying for a job in the physics department as I was graduating, boom, they gave it to me because they already knew me through networking and through appropriate self-promotion. And then there's been other things that I was able to get, other actual jobs where they paid me money through volunteering. I volunteered, they saw how great I was, they asked me to join, they asked me to apply, and then I got the job. And the other thing about the professional organizations, of course, that you can use to help you find people to network with is the directory, right? As a member of, for example, APS or AAPM, you have access to the directory of all the members in that group. So go through the directory, find people that look like they'd be people you'd want to connect with, maybe work for in the future, or see how you might be able to, if you see somebody working for Company X or University Y or Group Z, and you think you might be able to provide value, just like that mathematician thought she could provide value to JPL, reach out to them. Dear Alaina, we're both members of APS. I see that you work for the University of X. I do X and Y. I see you do X and Y plus 1. Maybe there's a way we can collaborate. Maybe we can work on a paper together. You'd be amazed how many people do not think to utilize the directory of their professional organization for networking. So do that. And then at conferences, think about attending strategically. And what I mean by that is don't just show up to the conference and expect things to happen. Read the program carefully. Find opportunities, make out your schedule so that you can actually go to opportunities where you'll be interacting and networking with people. Reach out to speakers and people who you know are going to be attending and make appointments. Volunteer at the conference if you can. That, again, shines a spotlight on you. And then if you can't go to a conference, no problem. You can still use it as a networking opportunity. Because what you can do, and this is what I do all the time, first of all, if I can't go to a conference, I follow the Twitter feed to see what are the interesting sessions and who are the interesting speakers, and then I'll reach out to those people. I also will go through the conference program if I'm not attending, and I will email the keynote or email a speaker and say, Dear Dr. X, I'm not attending the conference due to other engagements or another commitment, but I'm really interested in your work, and I think there might be an opportunity to collaborate. Could we have a meeting, short meeting, informal conversation after the conference. So I actually use the conference as what I call a networking node, a place that I can that aggregates people of like-minded interests all together. And even if I'm not at the physical conference, I can use the conference program and the Twitter feed and some other things to actually find out what's happening and then use that as a way to connect with people. It's a way to make an introduction. You can find people to network with by reading, of course. A lot of people they think about, you read a lot of journal papers, so they think about reaching out to the authors. But you should also be reading articles like in the Wall Street Journal, in Inc. magazine, Fortune magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, and New York Times, and so on and so forth. And you can reach out to people who are quoted. In other words, the sources who are quoted in those articles. I read this article and I thought this was really interesting. I'd like to learn more about what you do. I did that with a colleague 10 years ago. She wrote an article. I thought it was great. It wasn't a journal paper. It was an article in a trade magazine for communication specialists. And I reached out to her and I said, I think what you wrote was really interesting. I'd like to talk to you more about it. She was thrilled to have a conversation because you know what? People love talking about themselves. So if I'm saying to her, I want to learn more about you, she'd be thrilled. And straight away, within 24 hours, she responded back and said, I'd be delighted to talk to you. So we had a nice conversation, and that was 10 years ago, and we still stayed in touch. And that's how I networked from reading. And then the other thing I want you to think about in terms of networking and finding people for your network is these things called tech clusters or technology clusters. So these are geographically focused organizations that have that are based in a particular industry. So, for example, Silicon Valley is a great example of a tech cluster. It's a critical mass of like-minded companies in a particular industry in a particular geographic region. And what happens is when you have a lot of companies in a particular area, it attracts talent in that area to move to that area. It attracts people to form new companies in that industry in that area, and it attracts companies in that industry to move to that area. And what happens is that all these companies and these individuals who work in this particular industry they form their own organization. They form their own professional society. Here's a great example. In Tucson, Arizona, where I'm based, we have a lot of optics companies. So we have an optics cluster. So the optics professionals came together and formed the Arizona Optics Industry Association. They have events, they have membership events, they have networking opportunities, they have jobs that they advertise, they have people who are elected, and I think they even have a paid staff member. And if I was interested in working in optics, or if I was interested in moving to Tucson and with my physics or STEM degree, I would reach out to the Arizona Optics Industry Association and say, I'm interested in learning more about your industry. Could we have an informal conversation? The tech clusters are so resourceful, and they are such a good resource for you for finding people to network with and also for connecting with people who can actually open opportunities for you and tell you about hidden opportunities. Same thing with the alumni associations. People think, well, okay, I'm only going to network with the 4 people that graduated in my sub-discipline the year I got my PhD. But there's so much more that you can get from an alumni association, and most of you have at least one alumni association, if not more, that you are associated with, and you can go through the directory and see who's working for companies or organizations that you're interested in connecting with. You can network with them. You can read the alumni magazine, the alumni website to find out what's happening, and you can even promote yourself in the alumni magazine. Alaina Levine just got this award. They look for things like that. They want you to do that. They want you to remain engaged. And then, of course, with social networks, and I'm going to give you an example with LinkedIn in just a moment, but staying connected on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, very, very important. Spontaneous networking, I touched on it earlier, but I just want to emphasize the importance of this. Whenever I get on an airplane, I try to talk to the person next to me. And if they don't freak out after I say that I'm a science writer or I work in STEM and then go back to reading about Kim Kardashian, then they lead in and they say, tell me more about what you do, and then I know this is somebody that I can have a conversation with. And I've met people on airplanes that were not in my industry. They were not in my field. They were completely outside of STEM. They were completely outside of communications. They were not comedians. And I have been able to create relationships with them that provided specific, distinct value to both of us. In fact, one time I was sitting on an airplane and I was talking with a woman. Turns out she was the wife of a very famous senator in the United States. And we talked about what she did, and she told me she gives talks at charities a lot. And she asked what I did. I said, well, I give a lot of talks, and I'm a comedian. She says, oh, can you help me? I never knew how to put humor appropriately into my speeches. And that led to me helping her put humor into her speeches. That was just from me doing spontaneous networking on airplanes. And I found out from airplanes, from sitting and talking with people on airplanes in particular, I have found out about career opportunities and experiences and paths that I never thought even existed. It's been amazing. I mean, another time I was sitting on an airplane, I was in the middle seat, and the two people on either sides of me were colleagues, and they were talking over me. So it was a little rude, but they were talking over me about their work, and I interrupted them, and I said, excuse me, are you something? Because they mentioned some specific area, and they told me what they worked for, and it turned out that they did public relations for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And then they told me about a huge nuclear waste conference that takes place in Arizona every year, and they connected me with the people who work there, and that led to me getting a job with them, where I was able to write articles about nuclear waste, which is, of course, every little girl's dream. But I wouldn't have gotten that if I had not opened my mouth and started talking to them on the airplane. Now, when we talk about alumni associations, I just wanted to give you a great example that you can use, a great tool that you can use on LinkedIn to find alumni. And so this is something that, as you see in front of your screen, what you're looking at is a visual that comes from my LinkedIn profile. And since I'm a University of Arizona alum, this is what comes up. But there's a tool on LinkedIn that if you hover over this black bar right over here, right around here where it says Connect, if you hover over it, you'll find a sub-menu selection called Find Alumni. You click on that, and this is the screen you see. And it automatically goes to the university that you have delineated as your university. But quite honestly, right here, as you can see, you could change school. It doesn't matter. You could list Harvard, you could list the University of Alabama, you can list whatever school you want. And immediately I see there's 150,000 people following the University of Arizona. I can change what years I want to look for alumni. And so what I do, what happens is, the reason why it says 439 results is because I wanted to do a search for alumni who live in the San Francisco Bay Area and work in research. And you can actually see where they work, where they live, what they do. If you scroll to the right here, you'd be able to see what they graduated in, what skills they use, their functional area, and so on and so forth. It's such a powerful tool. But I wanted, in this case, just to find out who lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, because let's say I wanted to move there, and who works in research. And these were the companies, these were the organizations that came up. And so now I see that here, 18 U of A alums who are registered on LinkedIn work for Stanford, and 18 work for Genentech. Now that's a very telling piece of data right there, because let's say I wanted to work for Genentech. Now I have connections there, because what's listed below here, what you can't see, is the actual names of those alumni that I can then now reach out to, and because we're both alums, we have a connection, and I can start networking with them. So take a look at the Find Alumni tool on LinkedIn. It's so powerful. It's really amazing. Lastly, I just wanted to just touch on the idea of networking at an event and how we can lay the foundation for a win-win alliance. Remember that everybody is there to network, so when you have butterflies in your stomach as you walk into a mixer, recognize that everybody's there for the same reason. Bring business cards if you can, and ask for business cards, and learn the proper business etiquette of shaking hands, exchanging cards, dress appropriately. These were two pictures that I found. These people obviously were from the 80s, and they were not well dressed. So this is not what you would wear, and this was my point, is you're going to dress appropriately for the event. You're going to know what's in style and what's not in style, and you're not going to dress like you come from the 1980s. It's totally tubular. You're going to be there. You can enjoy the food and drink, but you're not going to overly imbibe, right? You need to keep a clear head. You're going to look for action nodes. Action nodes are places where people are congregating. So it makes it a lot easier for you to actually start a conversation, right? An example of an action node at a mixer is a line for the food or alcohol, or maybe there's a statue. And you can go up to somebody who's online and you can start a conversation. Hey, isn't this a great conference? Or have you been to this conference before? Hi, I'm Alaina Levine. Also, when you walk into a mixer, if you are a little uncomfortable and you don't know who to talk to, what I like to do is I look around, I do a reconnaissance, and I look for and I approach people who are alone. Because quite honestly, just like dating, nobody wants to stand around the club and be by themselves. So if you find somebody in a networking mixer that's standing by themselves, they'll be thrilled to talk to you. So this gives you a really good opportunity. And don't be afraid to just go up and introduce yourself. You don't need an opening line. It can be simply, hi, I'm Alaina Levine, but only use that if your name is actually Alaina Levine. Now, you're going to ask questions of the people, but you're not going to be rude and monopolize because you don't have a lot of time. You have to optimize your time. So what we're going to do is we're also going to think about how we're going to end the conversation. So we can excuse ourselves. We don't have to spend 20 minutes with this person. We can spend 10 minutes. And, you know, when there's a pause in the conversation, I can say, you know, I'd love to explore this with you further. Can I get your contact information? And I get their contact information, and then I can excuse myself, shake hands, and leave. But at a mixer, don't give out your CV. Do follow up through email and notes. And remember to have fun because it's always a privilege and an honor when you are able to network with people who are as passionate about what you're passionate about. Finally, some pillars of importance when it comes to networking on social media. And these things I think you kind of know, but I want to just sort of delineate it for you. First of all, you're going to be professional at all times and all ways, and that means just being serious about your craft. And that means that unlike in your private Facebook group that you have with your friends where you curse and you tell jokes and you share pictures of lots and lots of cats, we are not going to be sharing cats when we're trying to network on social media. So like on LinkedIn and on Twitter, we're not going to be sharing cats. We're going to be doing things that are professional, related to our profession. We're going to be dynamic. We want to engage the public. So especially on LinkedIn, we're going to be proactive and reactive. And what I mean by that is, for example, in the LinkedIn groups that you join, and you can join up to 50 groups, which you should, by the way. You can join these groups, and then you're proactive in the group when you start a conversation, when you post something, and you're reactive when you react to a post. So I post an article and you respond either privately to me and say, Alaina, that was really interesting, I'd like to learn more about that, or you respond by replying publicly to the group, which allows other people to know you and builds your brand into their mind. What you're doing on social media and why it's so important is you're creating digital trails to your brand, your attitude, and amplifying your reputation. Digital trails. This is very important. So also you're going to be valuable. We're going to be seen as only adding value. We're going to be seen in a positive light that is reflective of our brand, our attitude, and our reputation. We're going to be consistent. We're going to remember that cyberspace is forever space, but we're not going to let it become a time sink. Once you are distracted so much that you're not doing your outputs, your work that's related to your profession, then we're in a bad way. We have to make sure that we always focus on what's most important, which is the outputs associated with success in our profession, and we enhance that by doing social media networking. So in conclusion, I hope I've clarified to you that networking is an absolute necessity. You network because you want to advance yourself and you want to advance your field. It's absolutely required. It's not me trying to get something from you. It's me trying to understand what it is that you're interested in, what problems you have to solve, and how I might be able to solve them. And we do that through a spectrum of activities that begins with that first point of contact and ends when both of us leave this mortal coil. It's inherently linked to self-promotion because every time I'm introducing myself to you or I'm conversing with you, I'm sharing bits of information that are truthful and genuine and authentic about myself that will allow you to make a strategic decision to move forward in the relationship. Social networking is an essential part of that. We're going to be diversified in our networking, so we're going to look beyond our area of expertise and our geography. And here's my promise to you. Here's my brand. If you do it well, if you do it often, you will advance and you will find opportunities. You will be able to create opportunities that are so exciting and so enjoyable and so blissful for yourself, things that you never even thought were possible. And I have done that throughout my entire career. It is extraordinary to me every time I recognize how networking has helped my career. In fact, this webinar that I'm giving today is a direct result of networking. And the book that you see right there that's going to be coming out, this interstellar best-selling book, which I know you're all going to buy because it's just so fabulous, Networking for Nerds, that book is a direct result of me networking. And I actually talk about how that book came to fruition, how I actually got a book contract because of networking. I actually talk about that in the book. So I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. This was my honor and my privilege to work with you today to communicate to you how important networking is for you in your career. I want to thank AIP and its career network partners for this type of sponsorship of this type of activity. I want to let everybody know I'm going to be sending you a follow-up email with information that will assist you in your career. Please stay in touch. Connect with me on Facebook. Connect with me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Just don't stalk me, please. Send me an email if you have any questions. I'm going to stick around for anybody who has any other questions. But this concludes our webinar today, and I thank you again so much for this opportunity. And I'm not going to wish you good luck because you don't need it. Remember, you're freaking brilliant. I'm just going to say enjoy your career adventure because it's going to be fantabulous, and that's a real word. A real word. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll stick around for questions. Have a wonderful day. I'm looking for questions. Somebody had a really good question. Can you comment on the importance of a thank you email after a phone interview? Great question. This is an absolute necessity, and a lot of people don't even think to do this. So when you do it, it immediately elevates your brand and shines a spotlight on you and shows them what kind of a great attitude you have, and then that goes to amplifying your reputation. So if somebody takes time out of their day to do either an informal conversation or a formal interview, do send them a thank you note. If you feel more comfortable sending them an email, that's perfectly fine too. But if you prefer to send them a handwritten note, let me tell you, I have actually built relationships based on handwritten notes. I've sent handwritten notes to people, then people thank me for the thank you notes, and that's built relationships. It's actually solidified them. So do express appreciation, no doubt about it, express appreciation. But most importantly, you can express appreciation in any format. But do it. At least send an email if you can possibly do that. So somebody said, asked, what if you are a recent bachelor's graduate and you do not have such expertise to initially add value? Another great question. And that goes back to the idea that, you know what, you always have something of value. And when you have a networking connection, when you start talking to somebody and you learn more about what they do, you're asking them, very detailed questions. What do you work on? What kinds of projects do you do? What skills do you use most? Have you ever done X? Because my expertise is in X and X plus 1. Then you can start to learn how you can add value. And like I said earlier, there's so much that an early career scientist can do that can really add value. An early career scientist, engineer, or other professional. People really look for that. Another person asked, what is the best way to network into a STEM career if my current job has nothing to do with it? Great question. Thanks for asking that. So the way you want to do that is networking, okay? So what I mean by that is start looking at companies, start looking at organizations, start looking at subfields or disciplines that you're interested in going into. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're not a physicist, but you really would like to work in physics. You would maybe you have a math background, or maybe you're in sales. Maybe you're not a scientist at all, but you really want to work in physics. Well, what I would recommend is, first of all, go to the different physics societies, so like that under the AIP, to learn about the different types of physics careers that you can have. You could take a look and see who are some of the people that are working in areas that you're interested in. You can start seeing what are the companies that are coming up that are advertising on the AIP Career Network Partners website, so you get a sense of what types of opportunities are out there and what types of companies are hiring. And then you can start looking for those people on LinkedIn, or you can start doing searches on LinkedIn for physics and, let's say, physics and sales, or physics and, let's say this, company X. And you'll start to see people that you're connected to through LinkedIn that you could then make, you can make inquiries with that you could potentially connect to. I see a lot of people are connecting with me on LinkedIn, and that's terrific. Just a tip, when you connect with somebody on LinkedIn and they don't know you, send them a customized invitation. So don't just say, Alaina, can I connect with you? Just don't use the default. Tell me how you found me or why you want to connect with me, because otherwise I'm going to think you're a stranger and I don't know who you are. And generally with connections on LinkedIn, I want to know who it is that I'm connecting with. So if you say, Alaina, I saw your webinar, I'd love to connect with you, that's going to be a great way to oil the connection that we have. So somebody talked about, let me see if there were any other questions. Is it okay to say to people whom we've just met, hello, I'm so-and-so, and tell me your problems, I will solve them? That's a great question, too. So it's not exactly how, that's not exactly how you would say it, but you would say, oh, hi, hi, I'm Alaina, I'm Mary. Oh, hi, Mary, what do you do? Oh, I work at the University of Arizona in the physics department. Oh, what do you study? Oh, I study, optics, and in particular, I'm really interested in particle physics and X and Y. Oh, that's interesting. Have you ever worked at CERN? No, I haven't. I did work, blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, I know some people who work at CERN who do that kind of thing. Maybe I could connect you. Maybe that would help you. So it's not me just coming out blatantly and saying, hey, buddy, tell me your problems. It's me having a conversation with you where I'm asking you questions that reveal to me what problems are that you have that you need to have solved. And that allows me to share with that, or to go forward with that. There are a lot more questions here, and I guess I could stick online if people want to, but I'm actually going to go ahead and take these questions and I will put them into a Physics Today column for those questions that weren't answered, so that you will be able to see all the questions and all the answers to those questions, because we're a little bit out of time. So the questions will be answered. You'll see them in a future Physics Today column. Please stay in touch with me. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how your career adventure continues and how it progresses. And I hope to see you at an upcoming AIP Career Network Partner Conference or at some other amazing event. So congratulations on taking the next step in your career, and I wish you all the best. Take care and have a great day, everybody.